Good morning, everybody. Today's class is about the joints. So these joints are the ankle joint and subtalar joint. So any joint, as you know, we will go in some side headings. The first thing is what is the type of the joint and what are the articular surfaces with what is articulating with what. Next, the most important thing is the ligaments of the joints. What are the ligaments which are involved in it? And the relations, blood supply, means artery and the nerve. The last but not the least is the clinical aspect of the joint. So first, let's see the ankle joint. As we have said, what is the type of the joint the ankle joint is? The ankle joint is a modified hinge joint. And it is a uniaxial joint, means only in one axis the movement takes place. So that is about the type of a joint, means it is a hinge synovial type of joint which is in uniaxial, means only in one axis, that is dorsiflexion and plantar flexion, the ankle joint, the movement takes place. Now coming to the articular surfaces, what is articulating with what to form a joint? The distal ends of tibia and fibula will be articulating with the proximal end of the talus. So if you see here, this is the distal end of the tibia and fibula. So these are the two bones of the leg. Tibia, medial bone, and fibula is a lateral bone. The distal end of the tibia and fibula will be articulating with that of the talus and forms a joint which is called as the ankle joint, which is a uniaxial joint, uniaxial synovial type of joint, where the axis of the movement is only in one axis, that is dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. So this is about that of the type of the joint. Now you can see this is the inferior aspect or the distal aspect of the talus of the tibia. So what we are seeing, the extension medially, this is called as medial malleolus. Medial malleolus, inferior aspect of the articular surface of the tibia, inferior aspect of the articular surface of the tibia. Next, this is the lateral malleolus of the fibula. This bone is fibula. This is the lateral malleolus of the fibula, and this is the inferior aspect of the distal aspect of the fibula articular surface. So this distal end of the tibia and fibula will be articulating with that of the surface of the articular surface of the talus. This is the body of the talus, what we are seeing. So both, all the three together form a joint which is the ankle joint. Now coming to the description of that of the parts, means distal aspect, as we have said that yes, the inferior aspect of the tibia and the fibula is articulating with that of the talus. But when you see the in deep, the articular surfaces, if you are going in depth, what is that is? The articular surfaces, as we have said, it is a trochlea of the talus. So this is the talus, this bone is a talus. These are the tarsal bones, talus, calcaneum, navicular, cuneiforms, cuboid, they all form as that of the, these are all called as that of the tarsal bones. Just in the upper limb, how we have seen the carpal bones, scaphoid, lunate, tricentral, pisiform, same way, in the lower limb, there are tarsal bones. So in that, among the tarsal bones, talus is one of the tarsal bones. So this is called as trochlea of the talus. So when you are seeing the articular surfaces, so what you are seeing, so this surface is called as trochlea of the talus. Trochlea means like a pulley like. So this is a trochlea of the body of the talus. This is a trochlea of the talus. Next, manular mortise, which is formed by tibia and fibula. So this is the manulae, as I have said. Above the articular surfaces is medial malleolus, lateral malleolus with the inferior aspect of tibia and fibula. So these are forming as a malleolus, which is called as mortise. Mortise is like what we have seen as a groove. So if you have seen the medial malleolus, inferior aspect of the tibia, inferior aspect of the fibula, with that of the lateral malleolus, it is forming as a groove. So that groove is called as mortise. So that mortise, if you say as ankle joint is having a mortise, that mortise is formed by medial malleolus, inferior aspect of the tibia, inferior aspect of the fibula, and the lateral malleolus, which is forming the manular mortise. Yes, other than that, separately there is lateral and medial malleolus. As such, we have seen this is a medial malleolus, this is the lateral malleolus. So these are all the articular surfaces of the ankle joint. So here you have to remember what is a mortise. Mortise is a space-like thing. Yes, or a groove-like thing. That mortise is formed by medial malleolus, inferior surface of the tibia, inferior surface of the fibula, with that of the lateral malleolus is together they are forming as a mortise. Yes. So the same description which has been written here. The proximal articular outermost layer of the ankle joint is made by the articular facets. So that articular facets means what is articulating with what? Means tibia and fibula is articulating with talus as we have discussed earlier. So if you go in the depth of that articular part, the lower end of the tibia, which consists of medial and the lateral malleolus, along with inferior transverse tibiofibular ligament. So proximal articular surface, what you have said, is the lower end of the tibia, along with lower end of the tibia with the medial and the lateral malleolus. Along with this, it is forming as an inferior transverse tibiofibular ligament. So here if you see, between the tibia and the fibula there would be a ligament which is called as inferior tibiofibular ligament. Between the tibia and the fibula, the ligament which is present is tibiofibular ligament. So these three together create a socket which is called as tibiofibular socket. That socket is termed as tibiofibular mortise. So you can either call it as tibiofibular socket or tibiofibular mortise. So this socket, what you are seeing, medial malleolus, inferior surface of the tibia and the lateral malleolus with the inferior aspect of the fibula is forming the mortise. Along with it, between the tibia and fibula, there is a ligament which is called as tibiofibular ligament. So these three together, medial malleolus with tibiofibular ligament and the lateral malleolus, they form a mortise which is called as tibiofibular mortise. So this is about the proximal articular part. When you see the distal articular part, as we know, tibia and fibula is articulating the talus. So when you go in depth about the distal articular outermost layer of the ankle joint, the articular facets is a talus. So this is the talus which consists of upper, medial, lateral aspect of the body of the talus. When you see here, yes, so this is the talus. So this is the proximal articular part is articulating with the talus, which consists of the top here, superior, medial and the lateral aspect of the talus will be articulating and forms a joint. The articular facet of the talus includes upper, medial, lateral aspects of the body of the talus. When you see that body of the talus, this body of the talus will fit snugly into that of the mortise. The mortise, as we have discussed, which is formed by medial malleolus, inferior aspect of the tibia, lateral malleolus. So the talus, the superior aspect of the talus, which is forming as a trochlea like it will snugly fit into the mortise which is formed by the bones. So when you see the body of the talus, as we have said, it consists of superior surface, medial surface and lateral surface. We are saying, yes, this articular surface of the talus is fitting into that of the mortise, which consists of superior, medial and the lateral. The superior is that of the trochlea like a pulley like. When you see the medial part, articular facet of the medial part it is like a comma shape with the articular which articulates with the medial malleolus. When you see the lateral aspect, it is like a triangular shaped, which is the triangular facet for the lateral malleolus. Means here the distal articular surface is the body of the talus. Yes, that is correct. This is the proximal, this is the distal. The distal articular surface of the body of the talus consists of superior, medial and lateral. The superior articular surface of the body of the talus is like a pulley-like. So this is like a pulley-like which articulates with the inferior surface of the tibia. Next, the medial aspect of the talus is like a comma-shaped facet for the articulating with the medial malleolus. The lateral aspect of the talus is like a triangular shaped, which is triangular facet, which is articulating with the lateral malleolus. So same thing that we have discussed here. If you see here, yes, the body of the talus present three articular surfaces: superior pulley-shaped articular surface, which is called as trochlear pulley, which articulates with the inferior aspect of the lower end of the tibia. It articulates with, this is a pulley-like, which is articulating with the inferior aspect of the lower end of the tibia. So that is superior surface, which is like a pulley-like. Next, coming to the next, the medial comma-shaped articular surface articulates with the lateral aspect of the medial malleolus. So when you see it, this is that of the comma-shaped malleolus, yes, facet, which is articulating with the lateral aspect of the medial malleolus. Means this comma-shaped facet is fitting with that of the medial malleolus. It articulates with the medial malleolus lateral surface. Okay. Now coming to that of the lateral triangular facet, which articulates with the medial aspect of the lateral malleolus. So when you see it, the lateral side, it is that of a triangular articular facet, which is articulating the lateral malleolus. So this is the medial aspect which is articulating with this the lateral aspect which is articulating. That only is a part here. So when you are seeing it, descriptive part, you feel it is very tough part. But when you come and see the figure part, superiorly it is a pulley-like which is articulating with the inferior articular surface of the tibia. Medially it is comma-shaped facet which is articulating with the lateral aspect of the medial malleolus. Yes. Laterally, it is like a triangular shaped facet which is articulating with the medial surface of the lateral malleolus. So that you have to remember. So when you are seeing the figure, it makes it clear. Okay. So the wedge-shaped body of the talus, all in all, it fits into that socket above. So when you see here, yes, this is a wedge-shaped type of the body of the talus, which is fitting into, snugly fitting into the socket which is formed by that of the ankle mortise. What we are saying is, so it is fitting, this wedge shaped body is fitting into that of your mortise which is formed by medial malleolus, lateral malleolar and inferior aspect of tibia and fibula. This is about the proximal articular and distal articular surfaces of the ankle joint. So after this one, let's see about the ligaments. So the ligaments of the ankle joint include all the joint, in any joint if you see, the common ligament that is present is, yes, capsular ligament. So if you see from upper limb to the lower limb, this ligament, it is common for all the joints. So yes, that is the capsular ligament. Other than that, there are medial ligament and lateral collateral ligament. The medial ligament is also called as deltoid ligament, and there is one more which is called as lateral collateral ligaments. Let's see the attachments of each ligament in depth. First is a capsular ligament. The articular capsule, this capsular ligament, surrounds the joint. So when you see it, the capsular ligament, so this is a capsular ligament which is covering whole of the joint proximally and distally. So when you see the attachment, so you have to see the attachments of the joint capsule above and below one, anteriorly, posteriorly and laterally. So articular capsule surrounds a joint. Above it is attached, that capsule is attached to the borders of the articular surfaces of tibia and the malleolus. So when you see the attachment at the upper part, it is attached to the borders. So when you see it, so this is the capsular ligament. It is attached to the body of the tibia and that of your malleolus medial and that of the lateral malleolus. That is the attachment above. So this is the attachment. What you are seeing is the above attachment. When you see it inferiorly, the attachment below to the thallus around its upper articular surface. So below it is attached to the thallus with its upper articular surface. This is the thallus, this is the thallus bone, this is the calcaneus bone and the navicular cuneiforms and the cuboid bone. So but inferiorly the capsular ligament is attaching to whole of the body of the thallus and to that of the other parts of that of the part. So to the thallus around its upper articular surface. So that is the attachment of the fibrous capsule above and below. After it, when you see the capsule anteriorly, the joint capsule, when you see it anteriorly and posteriorly, the capsule is thin. Anteriorly also it is thin. Even posteriorly also the capsule, when you see it, it will be very thin. So anteriorly the joint capsule is broad, thin and a fibrous layer. It is broad, thin and a fibrous layer. So remember, anteriorly the fibrous capsule is thin. When you see it posteriorly also the fibers are thin, which run, these fibers which run mainly transversely, blending with the ligament, which is called as the transverse ligament. So when you see it, the posterior part of the fibrous capsule is also thin. Here the fibers are running transversely, blend with that of the transverse ligament. So they blend with the transverse ligament between the tibia and that of the fibula. So anterior part of the fibrous capsule is thin. Even the posterior part of the fibrous capsule is thin. But when you see the lateral attachment of the fibrous capsule between the malleolus, yes, this is a thick end to form the ligament. So when you see the laterally the fibrous capsule is thickened. The capsule is thickened. It is attached onto the medial surface of the lateral malleolus. So when you see it laterally it is thickened, which is attaching to the of the medial aspect of the lateral malleolus. Yes. The capsule is thickened laterally. Whole of this one within the fibrous capsule, it is lined by a membrane which is called as a synovial membrane, which extends superiorly between tibia, fibula, up till that of the interosseous ligament, because between the tibia and fibula there is a membrane which is called as interosseous membrane. So this will be extending about up till that of the interosseous tibiofibular ligament. So when you see the joint attachment, so you have to tell about the fibrous capsule attachment, above attachment and below attachment. Above it is attached to that of the peripheral margins. Fibrous capsule, when you see it is attached to the tibia and fibula along with that of the malleolus. That is the attachment above. Below it is attached to the thallus. It is the body of the thallus. That is the attachment to the below. In front and behind, that is anteriorly and posteriorly. Anteriorly the fibrous capsule is thin. It is formed by that of the fibers. Yes, whereas posteriorly it is also thin, where the fibers are running transversely, blending with that of the ligament. When you see laterally, the fibrous capsule is thickened, which is extending between the lateral malleolus. It extends at the thickened band as a tibiofibular ligament. So laterally, the fibrous capsule is thickened, whereas anteriorly and posteriorly, the fibrous capsule is a thin part. Okay. As we have said, whole of the capsule, fibrous capsule, when you see any of the joint, at inner side for the free movement, there is a lining membrane which is called as synovial membrane. The synovial membrane lines the inner surface of the fibrous capsule, but it ceases, means it stops at the periphery of the articular cartilages. Means at the periphery, there is no lining of the synovial membrane. Whole of the fibrous capsule, as we have seen, above, below, anteriorly, posteriorly and laterally, we have seen the attachment. The inner surface of the whole of the fibrous capsule is lined by a membrane which is called as synovial membrane. But that lining is deficient. To remember this part, it's deficient at the periphery of the articular cartilages. At the periphery, it is deficient. The synovial membrane is deficient. One more thing. The synovial membrane, there includes a process which is a synovial fluid like which is present. It goes, that fluid at the synovial membrane extends up to the top of your inferior tibiofibular. Means when you see here, so here you get tibiofibular ligament. So the synovial lining which is present, it extends into the top the tibia and fibula. There where is the tibiofibular ligament. So that membrane or the lining, not only it is lining the finer aspect of the fibrous capsule, but also it is lining of the synovial membrane. It is extending up to the top the inferior aspect of the tibiofibular ligament. And the joint between that is called a syndesmosis type of the joint, but it extends up to that. So this is the thing that you have to remember. Whole is that fibrous capsule is lined by that of the synovial membrane, but at that periphery it is deficient. So that is about the synovial fibrous capsule with the synovial membrane. The next ligament that we have come across is the medial ligament. The medial ligament is otherwise also called as deltoid ligament. Mostly in our exams what is asked is a deltoid ligament only. So do remember the medial ligament is only called as a deltoid ligament. When you see the attachment of the deltoid ligament, it is attached, it extends from the medial malleolus. It is a triangular shaped ligament. So when you see it, this is the medial ligament. Yes, this medial ligament, which itself is called as, otherwise also called as deltoid ligament, it is a triangular shaped ligament which extends from the medial malleolus to that it spreads up to the top. From the medial malleolus, it extends or it fans up to the top the three tarsal bones such as talus, calcaneus and the navicular bone. So it fans out, means it extends from the medial malleolus to the talus, calcaneus and the navicular bone. So it extends. But upper attachment is yes medial malleolus, whereas lower attachment it extends to that of the talus, calcaneus and the navicular bone. Talus, calcaneus and the navicular bone. So this is how the triangular ligament is attachment. So it is triangular in shape. The tip of the triangle is attached to the medial malleolus, but inferiorly its base splits and attaches to three tarsal bones such as the talus, navicular and the calcaneal. So when you see in depth about this deltoid or the top of the medial ligament, the main action of this medial ligament is to resist the eversion of the foot. There is inversion of the foot and there is a eversion of the foot. If you say this as a foot, there is inversion of the foot and also there is eversion of the foot. When you see, if you think this as a foot, you think this as the medial margin of the foot, this is the lateral margin of the foot. When you see it, in that of the inversion, the medial margin of the foot is raised, whereas in eversion, the lateral margin of the foot is raised. The most important function of the medial ligament is to resist the over-eversion. So this is that of your lateral ligament has to do, it resists the over-eversion of the foot. So the over-eversion of the foot is maintained by means of the medial ligament, which is also called as the deltoid ligament. Let's see the attachment of this deltoid ligament in depth. So deltoid ligament, as we have said, is a triangular ligament where the apex is attached to that of the medial malleolus. But coming at the lower part, it is split into two parts. It consists of a superficial part and the deep part. So do remember the deltoid ligament, what we are seeing medially, which is extending from the tip of the medial malleolus, consists of two parts. Yes, the two parts includes the superficial part and the deep part. When you see for the superficial part, either for the superficial part or the deep part, the common attachment is the medial malleolus. Yes, when you see it, yes, it is a common, whether it might be superficial part of the deltoid ligament or the deep part of the ligament, the common attachment is attached to that of the medial malleolus. Yes, but when you see, as we have said, the common attachment for superficial and deep is, yes, the medial malleolus. But this deltoid ligament or the medial ligament consists of two parts, superficial part and the deep part. Within that superficial part, it again consists of three fibers, anterior fibers, middle fibers and the posterior fibers. So when you see it, so this is a superficial part of the deltoid or the medial ligament, which consists of anterior fibers, intermediate fibers and that of the posterior fibers. The anterior fibers of the medial ligament, it extends from that of the medial malleolus to that of the navicular bone. So when you see that this is the medial malleolus and it is extending up to the navicular bone. So these fibers are called as tibio-navicular fibers. So this is the tibio-navicular part of the medial ligament. When you see the intermediate part or the middle fibers are connected to that of the sustainculum tali of the calcaneum. So this is the talus sustainculum tali of the calcaneal bone. The intermediate part of the deltoid ligament extends from the medial malleolus to that of the calcaneum, that is the sustainculum tali of the calcaneal bone. Next, the posterior part extends from the medial malleolus to the tubercle of the talus. So the superficial part of the medial deltoid ligament includes tibio-navicular part, tibio-calcanean part and the tibio-talar part. So this is the tibio-talar part, posterior part, anterior part, tibio-navicular part, intermediate part, tibio-calcanean part. So this is a superficial part of the deltoid ligament. After the superficial, as we have said, the medial ligament includes both superficial and the deep part. So up till now we have done with the superficial part. Let's see the deep part. The deep part is connected to that of the medial surface of the tibia. So that you are seeing the malleolus, it extending up to that of the talus. So it is extending up to that of the talus. So anterior tibio-talar ligament. So the deep part of the medial ligament or the deltoid ligament is anterior tibio-talar ligament, which run anteriorly between the medial malleolus and the talus. So when you see the anterior tibio-talar ligament, it runs anteriorly between the medial malleolus and that of the talus. So this is called as a deep ligament of the deltoid ligament. So when you see the deltoid ligament, it consists of two parts, superficial part and the deep part. So the superficial part of the deltoid ligament extends as three fibers, that is the anterior from the tibia to the navicular bone, from the tibia to the sustainculum tali, from tibia to the top of the talus. So this is the superficial part of the deltoid ligament. When you see the deep part, it is the anterior tibio-talar, which is extending from the top of the tibia, from the lower end of the malleolus, from the tibial malleolus, medial malleolus to the top of the talus. This is the deep part of the deltoid ligament. Yes. After the medial or the deltoid ligament, the next ligament of the ankle joint is the lateral ligament. The lateral ligament is composed of three parts: anterior tibiofibular, posterior tibiotalofibular and calcaneofibular. So the lateral, this is the lateral malleolus, which includes three parts: anterior talofibular, posterior talofibular and intermediate, which is forming as a calcaneofibular. So these are the three parts of the lateral ligament. Anterior talofibular ligament extends between the top of the lateral malleolus to that of the talus. You can see from the lateral malleolus to that of the talus bone. Same way, when you see that of the middle posterior talofibular, it extends from the lateral malleolus to the posterior aspect of the talus. From that, what you are seeing, it is that of your lateral malleolus to the posterior aspect of the talus. It is a posterior talofibular ligament. Anterior talofibular ligament, posterior talofibular ligament. One more is calcaneo, which is extending from the calcaneus to that of the malleolus. So when you see, it extends from the calcaneus to that of the malleolus. So the lateral ligament of the ankle joint includes anterior talofibular, posterior talofibular and calcaneofibular ligament. So this is that of the lateral ligament of the ankle joint. Yes. When you see the relations, the most important thing, if you have seen the medial ligament, it resists the eversion of the foot, whereas the lateral ligament, it resists the over inversion of the foot. The medial, it is what? It resists the eversion of the foot, whereas lateral ligament, it resists the over inversion of the foot. Eversion and inversion. E stands for that of your medial ligament, whereas I stands for that of the lateral ligament. Yes. So after the ligaments, let's see the relations of that of the ankle joint anteriorly and posteriorly. What are the relations that you come across from medial to lateral side? So this is the object. This is a cross section. So here you are seeing the talus, tibia, and fibula. Anteriorly, it is related from medial to lateral side. This tibial is anterior. So when you see it, the extensor compartment muscles only. So the extensor compartment muscles anteriorly is tibial is anterior. Extensor hallucis longus with tibial vessels. Next is along with the extensor digitorum longus, peroneus tertius. Same way when you see it posteriorly, which is the flexor compartment from medial to lateral, tibial is posterior, flexor digitorum longus, tibial vessels and nerves, flexor hallucis longus. So this is the anterior and posterior relation. When you see the laterally, it is peroneus longus and the peroneus radius. So this cross section of the tibia along with the tibia, fibula and talus gives the idea what is present relations of the ankle joint anteriorly, posteriorly and that of the lateral. So this is what we have said, the anteriorly, the relations are tibial is anterior, extensor hallucis longus, vessels which are present, tibial vessels and nerves, extensor digitorum with peroneus tertius. Same way if you go behind, it is flexor hallucis longus, flexor digitorum, tibial vessels and nerves, along with that of the tibialis posterior comes posteriorly. Laterally when you are seeing it, it is peroneus longus and the peroneus tertius. Movements at the top of the ankle joint. The main movement is, as we have said, yes, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, to some extent inversion and eversion also. But the main movement is dorsiflexion. When you see the foot, this is called as dorsum of the foot. So when it is flexed, it is called as dorsiflexion. So this movement is dorsiflexion. This is plantar flexion. So the main movements at the ankle joint is dorsiflexion and plantar flexion, which takes place at the ankle joint. One thing, when you see here the dorsiflexion, here the dorsum of the foot, the angle between the dorsum of the foot and the leg is decreased. So if you have to explain what is dorsiflexion, yes, some students may not be knowing, but I have kept the pic here. I think you can understand. So the foot above part is called as the dorsum of the foot. Yes, that dorsum of the foot, if you are flexing, it is called as dorsiflexion, where the angle between the leg and the foot is reduced. This is the leg and this is the foot, dorsum of the foot. So when you are flexing it, the angle between the dorsum of the foot and that of the leg is reduced. So that type of movement is called dorsiflexion. So the range of movement is about 10 degrees. So how much flexion you can do is, the range is up till 10 degrees. But when you aid with along the tarsal bones, to the extent, to the minimum extent, up till 20 degrees, you can flex the dorsum of the foot. So it is called as dorsiflexion. When you see the plantar flexion, so this is the plantar aspect of the foot. So when you see the plantar aspect, the angle is reduced. Unlike dorsiflexion, the angle is reduced, whereas unlike in the plantar flexion, the angle is increased. The angle is increased. So this is the plantar flexion. So the range of movement here is up till 20 degrees. You can see the plantar flexion. How much flexion you can do is up till 20 degrees you can see it. And with the aid of the tarsal bones, up till 40 degrees you can do that of the plantar flexion. So this is what it is called as dorsiflexion. This is called as plantar flexion of the ankle joint. Yes. Now coming to the arterial supply. It is supplied by the manular